General Holder, let's go with what we just heard Donald Trump's defense secretary say. Did Donald Trump's defense secretary just outline prosecutable crimes for which Donald Trump should be prosecuted?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that, as I have said, by the end of this investigative process, you're going to find that Donald Trump has done the necessary things to meet all of the elements of a variety of statutes, and also have shown to have had the requisite intent in doing those. The tough question is going to be whether or not you then indict him, given all that that implies, and given the fact we've never done this in the history of this nation.
Why is that a tough question?
Indicting a former president brings into bear a whole bunch of things. It's going to be unbelievably divisive. It undermines, in a lot of ways, the continuity that we've had. What you said at the beginning of the show, the notion that an attorney general would look back at a prior administration and think about going after. That's what happens in other republics, in other nations. We don't do that in the United States. We may disagree vehemently with policies that a prior administration put in place, but to prosecute people in prior administrations, a president of a prior administration, is something that we've never done and, frankly, really never really considered.
But here's something they don't say in the countries where these things do happen. And by the way, in the countries where former presidents can be prosecuted, they include places like France. Okay, so we're not talking about strange places. One thing they don't say in those countries is no man, no person is above the law. We have been saying that constantly. It's something I stopped saying a long time ago. But that is one of the mystical beliefs, it seems, of the United States, that no one is above the law. And yet to say it's a difficult decision to prosecute a former president is to suggest, well, there's someone who's above the law if it's not bad enough. I can't quite figure out what that formulation is.
Yeah, there are norms that tend to guide how we operate, especially in the use of the federal criminal process. But if nothing else, Donald Trump was a norm breaker, and he has taken us to a place where a consideration of a prosecution of a former president and his closest allies. Let's understand this. This is not simply a look at the president. This is a look at his chief of staff, his potential cabinet members, people who served at high levels in the Justice Department. Considerations of the prosecutions of all of those people is totally appropriate.
You use the word divisive as a reason that the Attorney General will consider in whether or not to prosecute here if the evidence is there. Are Democrats the only ones who think about that word divisive? The Supreme Court obviously doesn't think about the word divisive. They're willing to rule against the interests and the concerns of 70% of the public. I have never heard Donald Trump be inhibited, or any Republican be inhibited, by the notion that what they're suggesting is divisive. The word divisive is something in the last several years, certainly in the Trump era, that I've only heard as a concern of Democrats.
Well, good prosecutors all prosecutors have discretion. Good prosecutors use that discretion to bring cases that will forward the cause of justice. I mean, there are cases, lots of cases that I've made as a prosecutor, a young prosecutor, where I could prove the case, prove the intent, and ultimately decided not to bring the case because it was not necessarily the appropriate thing to do, the right thing to do. And so, yeah, prosecutors do that. I would tend to think that in this situation, and I'm a partisan Democrat, Democrats would dial in that notion of discretion, take into account the impact on the nation to a far greater degree than the present iteration of the Republican Party would.